George here. Well, another day. And I was thinking, how babies are? Aren't they delightful? Uh, when they get born, they look so innocent and they all bring joy to their parents. And, maybe there are challenges bringing children up, but a large family, and I see a large family, always brings a joy to my heart to see, like a small community of people uh, and getting on and loving. And although there are quarrels, they still manage to patch them up and move on. But large families are so rare nowadays. Most people, when they get married, if they get married, would have no children or one or two. Very rare to have more than two children. And a lot of couples are now, let's say, gay couples, and gay couples don't cannot bear children because they're not it's same sex, right? So that means that those who are heterosexual married couples, then they would need to have more than two children in order to compensate for the population, in order to have the population replaced. Because in order to replace your population, you need to make 2.11 children per woman, assuming there's a couple, right, there. So the two would replace the mother and the father, and the 0.11 is there in case some of the children may not make it to reproductive age. Either they would maybe die through disease, accident, or whatever, right? Or maybe unfertile. Anyway, so and with that kind of a the reproductive with that kind of fertility rate, the population would maintain itself. If it's higher than that, it would grow exponentially, and if it's lower than that, it would fall exponentially. And what's alarming is that in most Western countries, if not all, definitely all European countries, in all European countries, the fertility rate is below 2. In fact, it's going down. In Spain, for example, it's 1.3. I think the highest probably is United Kingdom at 1.9, but that's still in decline. And Europe is not really big on immigration, although it has a lot of Muslim migrants now, as you see them on the news. Now, and Muslims tend to reproduce at a higher rate, and so Europe will be an Islamic region, maybe even an Islamic state, sometime this century, just by demographics alone. Something to consider is that how did all this begin? I think it's the decoupling of sexual pleasure and the role of reproduction, made possible through contraception, and the sexual revolution, which really says that one can have sex for pleasure without the commitments needed for a family. That can come later. And some people will choose even to have children later and have the benefits of a close relationship and a close sexual relationship by just living together without children and then getting married and having children at a later age, sometimes as old as 40. And that necessarily means that the number of years you can bear children is reduced, and usually people simply opt sometimes not to have kids or just to have one or two. So populations are falling, and in many countries around the world, who are in the third world, although they are actually growing, their populations are growing, as they get influenced through basically this Western idea of birth control. They are slowly decreasing and following in Europe, although not as fast. Very likely the demographic decline of the third world will follow later. Now, what does God say though? God says that children are a blessing, right? They're a blessing. He commanded us to grow and multiply and replenish the earth. And so when we restrict our reproduction, we are actually disobeying God. Certainly, we can space them through natural means, but by using technology to do this, it would actually disobey God. And that's the guiding of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church does allow natural birth control in terms of abstinence, but being open to life. But using technology to restrict the reproduction will lead to death. Not only death in terms of sin leading to death and you go to hell if you don't confess it, but it leads to death of your civilization, right? So because eventually your civilization will depopulate to zero. So this is something worth considering. Repent and search the scriptures. Those of you Catholics or Christians, the Muslims, they multiply. They have eight. I think an average of eight per family. I mean, that's we can learn. We can learn from them. Try to be obedient to God, right? And trust in Him. He will provide. Don't worry about having loads of children and not having enough money, because children are your wealth. And money does not come from your environment or from yourself. It comes through God, through the blessings of God. And obedience is always blessed, right? And you don't really need to have a very lucrative lifestyle, a very luxurious lifestyle, if that's what you're craving, in order to raise good kids. In fact, in my experience, those children who come from backgrounds which are not so wealthy are actually closer to God, more moral, and humble, right? It's only those who turn away from that into avarice, greed, as they covet things that the other people have. So think about it, and who knows, maybe there will be babies in your future. This is George signing off.